Welcome back to A Year of Final Fantasy, and we are in the month of Ramu. This month we get an extra video, so coming hot off the heels of our other video about jobs, we're gonna kind of roll this in and lead us into summons and summoners today. So we're going to talk about that. This is going to be its own line of videos about summons because they're just so iconic to the series. As you can probably see, because every month that I have named is actually after a summon. All of that is just so vital to the series as a whole, especially here from Final Fantasy III moving on. So we're definitely going to go into the role that each summoner plays in the particular game that they're in, but right now let's just go over generally some of the major summoners in the franchise. Eventually, as you'll see, as we start getting on through the games, you're going to notice a huge shift towards summons being a central point of these games. So as we approach Final Fantasy III, I think this is just the best time to introduce the summoner class and the summons, because Final Fantasy III is the first game in the series to actually feature this particular element of Final Fantasy. So let's go ahead and go over some of our iconic summoners here that lead this incredibly important aspect of the franchise. Now, when I talk about iconic summoners, I'm talking about characters that are specifically referenced as summoners and play a vital part in story. So any games that are jobless or don't have a job, you will have summons in there still. It's just not a particular character is meant to be in the story in that way. So our first big summoner is Rydia of Final Fantasy IV, which we're going to talk a lot about next month. Final Fantasy IV is one of my favorite of the series. As far as our next proper summoner, it actually doesn't appear until Final Fantasy IX. That's not to say that, again, there aren't summoners in the games in between there, it's just we don't have a particular character filling that spot. So in Final Fantasy IX, we have Garnet and Eiko, or Eiko, however you want to say her name, and they are a huge part of the game, right? Like, they take up probably about the first half, if not more, of the game, exclusively focusing on the summoners and their tribe and the role that they have to play in the story. The next one, Final Fantasy X, is pretty much the summoner game. The main character, or I guess I should say one of the main characters, Yuna, is a summoner. I mean, that's the point of the story, is to go on this summoner pilgrimage. If you've played all of the Final Fantasy games and you hear summoner, you're probably gonna think of Yuna fairly quickly. And as far as specific summoners, that's actually about it, focusing on just iconic people that are summoners in the game. You could make an argument about Lunafreya and Noctis in Final Fantasy XV, but that's not really the traditional kind of summoners that we're focusing on here. So what do I actually mean by traditional summoners? Well, in Final Fantasy, there are a few iconic pictures of what a summoner actually is. Usually, like most magic users, they're dressed in robes. These robes normally tend to be a little bit more flowy than, say, black mage or white mage robes. And the most defining feature of them usually is that they have a horn atop of their head. There are exceptions to this, like Rydia. She doesn't have a horn, but most other games where specific summoners appear, you'll see them with a horn, at least in some way, shape, or form. There can be a clever story arc behind it, maybe. My favorite in this case is Final Fantasy X, and even though Yuna doesn't have a horn, there's a very, very clever way that they include that reference in there. I absolutely love it. And I won't spoil it for you, but it's fantastic. So those are most of the characters that have a direct connection to the story being summoners, but Final Fantasy III and onwards, summoners appear in one form or another in pretty much every game afterwards, and it could be argued that the idea for the summons really, and I guess maybe the summoners, lead as far back as the original game. So summoners and their summons very much define Final Fantasy as we know it today, each game having a take on their own naming, story integration, and acquisition of the summons themselves. Summons are one of the largest chains that tie this franchise together, despite the games each being so different from one another. Whether you like them as your summons, your etalons, your aeons, your espers, astrals, avatars, guardian forces, scions, primals, eggies, wikis, whatever name you wish, we can all agree that summoners are simply awesome. So I'll leave it there, but again, this is only the foundation of the summoner class. We will definitely be revisiting this topic many more times, talking about the summons as well as their origins, and I'm extremely excited to be introducing you to all this knowledge of Final Fantasy. We're going to see how summoners weave in real history and magic from the Final Fantasy series to create these very iconic summons that we know today. And with that, next time on A Year of Final Fantasy, we draw the month of Ramuh to a close and we look at the Game of Honor itself, Final Fantasy III. There's a ton to talk about of this extremely elusive game, and I cannot wait. So until next time, Crystal Warriors, keep on gaming.